they outlawed it. Would not allow the Life Extension Foundation to sell it, threaten them, and then file a patent on it.
Yeah, well, that's what they want to do with supplements. They did that with a form of B6, as you probably know.
It just happened, didn't it? Like 6 months ago.
Yeah, 6 months ago. They're not stupid. These are billion-dollar companies, and they see an enormous market in supplements. But this is still America, still a supposedly free market competition. Beat us in the marketplace. Why use the government against us by taking supplements off the market? People want them. People are really helped by these supplements. Our patients' lives depend on their availability, so we may have to have protests outside the FDA or whatever. Just like the raw milk protest that's scheduled for November 1st. It's just crazy out there. I mean, a lot of people don't realize the FDA's been instigating SWAT team raids on supplement companies and on that Rawsome Foods out in California, where raw milk is even legal. SWAT teams arrested people. This is happening.
It's so frightening. It's like the Nazis.
Yeah, it's like the Nazis. They're not going at, aspirin kills 10,000 people a year. It's been documented. The FDA kind of yawns. No one's saying we should take aspirin off the market. Tylenol causes liver damage. That's been documented. People are dying because of Tylenol. Even at standard doses, people die from liver toxicity from Tylenol. I don't hear anyone saying Tylenol should be taken off the market. In fact, quite the opposite. They're constantly deregulating drugs like Prilosec, the acid blocker that's now over the counter. Prevacid, over the counter. Benadryl used to be a prescription item. Now it's over the counter. Benadryl has a lot of side effects. Sedates. You can get into a car crash if you took it the night before to help sleep.
What do you recommend for headaches, by the way?
Well, feverfew is quite... Well, there are 80 reasons why you can have headaches.
True.
You can have headaches because they're part of premenstrually, because your hormones, your estrogen, progesterone drop too fast. One of the most common reasons for headaches is head trauma. Some prior history of head trauma. It kind of disaligns or misaligns the cervical spine bones, and the blood supply in the back third of the brain is compromised, and people get headaches from that. And you have to find a good structural therapist who can normalize that. I recommend Roy Sweat, Sweat like perspiration, in Atlanta, Georgia, the greatest chiropractor who ever lived and will live. He's 85 years old, still practices full time, and hopefully he'll live to, like Moses, to at least 120. But he doesn't even use his hands. He has an instrument so precise. In my case, one adjustment has lasted 10 years. So other chiropractors hate his guts because he wants you out of the office, not keep coming back. So many causes of headaches many types of headaches relate to prior history of head trauma, even in infancy. I have a patient who's had migraine headaches so bad she ended up in the hospital repeatedly over the last 30 years and began to wonder whether life was worth living. A couple of visits to Dr. Sweat. First time in her life, she's headache-free.
Dr. Sweat?
Sweat, S-W-E-A-T, Sweat, yeah.
That's a great name.
He's down in Atlanta, Georgia, and as he said, he's a country boy from the hills outside of Atlanta. Yeah, a country boy with an IQ of about 180. So he's just absolutely brilliant. He's the greatest structural therapist that I've ever met, and believe me, I've met a lot of them. He's superb. So often his technique will help headaches. My wife, before we got married, she was having headaches every day. We've been married 10 years. I said, gee, do I want to marry someone who's having headaches every day? So we took her down to Roy Sweat. One adjustment, the headaches were gone. It was
wow.
Like, she had headaches every day, gone.
Have you been asked a lot, Dr. Gonzalez, about your view of the hormone cancer connection? And is it anything that you want to say anything about?
The mythology in the alternative world is bioidentical hormones are perfectly safe. The reality is they're not, and it depends on the situation like anything else. One thing I will say, we use vitamins and minerals very specifically and precisely. Every patient gets an individualized protocol. You give the wrong dose of the wrong vitamin, and you can make cancer grow. The same is true with hormones, even the bioidentical hormones. I once gave a lecture about 10 years ago, a 3-hour lecture on bioidentical hormones. I'm allegedly an expert in the field, and I ended the lecture with all these people in the audience rapt listening to me talk about bioidentical hormones. And now, having said all this for 3 hours, I rarely prescribe them, and it's like everybody's jaw dropped. And then I went on to explain in 5 minutes why I don't. Usually we find if you give, people who have had a hysterectomy, they're going to need some hormone support probably, but not necessarily, because if you stimulate the adrenals enough, the adrenals can produce estrogen, and our fat cells can produce estrogen too. And when the ovaries are gone, our other organs like the adrenals and our fat tissues can start producing a fair amount of estrogen.
Suzanne Summers must have really had a fit with you about this.
Well, she's really perplexed, but I've explained to her that on my program I rarely have to use bioidentical hormones. I have very few patients on them, and rarely do I use them because it's not necessary. I've had women patients with me now for 24 years, and a lot of them had all kinds of chemo and hysterectomy, and very few of them are on I could put up probably one hand or two hands the number of patients in my entire practice on bioidentical hormones. We just don't find it necessary. Now, in terms of their safety, I've read all of John Lee's books, and I know he meant well. But
how about Jonathan Wright?
Jonathan's a good friend, but I absolutely do not agree with him that these things do not cause cancer. Look, there's one unconventional physician that has said that he's never seen a case of cancer develop on bioidentical hormones. The fact is, I have 3 of his patients who developed cancer while getting bioidentical hormones.
But are you sure it's not from something else?
No, I'm sure it's from the bioidentical hormones. I've had look, in my practice we see everything. I've had patients who on bioidentical hormones tell me their cancer exploded. I've had patients that went on estriol. I've read all the literature. 1976 Journal of the American Medical Association. It has an anti-cancer effect. Well, hypothesize that it does, and certainly it's far less proliferative than estradiol. But I've had patients even there that developed. I've had 2 patients in my practice that developed endometrial cancer while getting natural estriol.
I don't take any of that. I just take progesterone, natural progesterone.
I've had patients on progesterone where breast cancer exploded. Lee made the case in his early books that progesterone is the cure for uterine fibroids. Well, I read that stuff back in the early 90s. I put 2 patients on that, and their fibroids exploded. And I tried to reach Lee to talk about it, but I noticed he never got back to me. But I noticed in the last version of his book he had changed it. I said, well, sometimes we'll find that the fibroids can increase if you take progesterone. You read his first book, it's all simple. All women in America have too much estrogen, not enough progesterone. All they need is progesterone. They don't need estrogen. Absolutely incorrect. I've had women who do need bioidentical hormones where progesterone makes them sick. Natural progesterone, all the right doses, read it all, read Wiley, all that stuff.
Right.
Put them on estrogen, they do better. But usually, the fact is the body is smarter than I am, and it's certainly smarter than Dr. Lee. You give the body the nutrients it needs for that individual patient, and you do the detox, usually the hormones tend to normalize. The body knows how to normalize hormones far better than I. Your brain knows how to normalize your hormones far better than I ever will. Even if I studied your body for the next 50 years, you will know how to do it through your own nervous system better than I ever will do it. What I need to do as a doctor, for example, is put people in the right direction, point them in the right direction, tell them what foods they need to eat, what foods they should avoid, what supplements they need, what supplements they don't need, and everybody's different. The supplement that works for you might make me sick. So you need to be on the right supplements, the right diet, the right detoxification, critically important. Why is that? Well, the liver is the body's main detoxification organ. The liver is intimately involved in regulating hormone levels. Hormones like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA are neutralized in the liver, and the liver very astutely and intelligently knows where to keep the blood levels in each patient. And if the liver's working well, it can do that far better than I can. The key is, in our world, most of our livers are under enormous stress because of the toxic load that's in the environment, 79,000 chemicals assaulting our liver. With the detoxification routines like the enemas, the liver works better, and magically, very often, so-called hormone problems like hot flashes or mood swings or insomnia improve. The Oriental physicians believe a lot of insomnia is due to liver toxicity, and I believe there's a case to that rather than hormones.
Very interesting. This is fascinating what you're saying. It's almost like the next generation, it's the Star Trek version.
Well, it is. If you get the body to work better, usually it can take care of hormones, even in women with hysterectomies. And one of the problems, a lot of the alternative fellows, it sounds like I'm criticizing everybody, I'm just speaking from 24 years of experience in the trenches. I have patients that come in, and they swear by the blood levels or saliva levels. I have patients that come in, women have absolutely no symptoms, and have extremely low levels of estrogen, progesterone, DHEA. I have women with high levels and have terrible hot flashes, etc. Every patient's different, and in those patients, often it's a question of getting the liver to work better so the liver more intelligently can keep the hormone levels where it should be. Because the liver will neutralize hormones. If it's doing it too quickly because it's getting bad signals or doesn't know what it's doing, you have to point it in the right direction. It will start detoxifying them less quickly, or if it's detoxifying them too slowly, you get an overload of estrogen, which accounts for some of Lee's belief that everything is too much estrogen. But if the liver's working right, even in our polluted age, it can get rid of the extra hormones and keep and maintain the ones that are in deficiency. But you got to get the liver to work well. Even if the ovaries are gone, the liver can often normalize hormone levels.
So we all should be doing coffee enemas daily. 2 pints a day, organic coffee, right? For prevention.
Organic coffee. Well, only if people want to have optimal health. If they're not interested in that, they turn off the station and yawn and do whatever.
Does that mean you're laying in your bathroom every day, or?
Yeah, well, I've been doing it 30 years, so I put the coffee in the bathroom, and I go sit on my couch and read. So I do a lot of reading now. But the first couple of years, we have people lie down on their left side,